Hey, everybody. It is December 2nd, a new month here on the Mo News Podcast. I'm Moshe Wanunu.
And I'm Jill Wagner. This is the place where we bring you just the facts.
And we read all the news and read between the lines so you don't have to. Jill, it's been a holiday weekend, a long holiday weekend. How are you doing?
Yes. As I like to say after these long weekends, we survived. That was it.
Survived. No, I hope the food was good.
Yes, it was a great Thanksgiving weekend. A lot of family, friends. I'm still full.
Well, this is what I'm told. I'm told we're in the period of time here where calories don't count.
Starting
with Thanksgiving through New Year's. And then the resolution begins. So everyone enjoy these 5 weeks. Nutritionists, doctors, health professionals tell me that calories do not count in the month of December.
And Moshe, if you're reporting it, it's got to be true.
Right. This is science. I'm told this is science. They've done studies, and calories do not count during this time. So everyone enjoy. I was asked over the weekend what my favorite Thanksgiving sides are, which led to a whole conversation on Premium over the weekend, where I said, listen, we don't take many stances here at Mo News, but the stance I will take, Jill, I don't know what your opinion is that turkey is a lesser poultry, and I would be fully behind an effort to make chicken or another poultry the main dish on Thanksgiving.
And I majorly disagree. I was one of the people who voted in the poll on Premium and said, no, turkey takes a backseat to no bird, not chicken. I love turkey. I actually prefer it.
Jill, I understand it's a controversial view. My thing on Thanksgiving are the sides, the pies, all the accoutrements around the bird.
Well, I did see that the other debate, and of course we will eventually get to news here, but the other debate happening on Premium is pie a side?
Oh.
And I would say I agree with the people here, Moshe. I do not think that, I think of pie as a dessert. Yeah. And I would say I think of string bean casserole, sweet potato casserole, or whatever we call that, with the marshmallows on top. I think that is the sides.
Jill, you're just not trying hard enough, and you're not creative enough, because pie can be an appetizer, pie can be a side, pie can be the main, pie can be breakfast the next morning. Come on, we can all admit we've tried it at various points. So I'm a believer that pie is what you make of it, and you can have it at any part of the meal. But I know that this is looking back on Thursday now, and we have a lot of news to get to.
Yes, so let's get to the headlines here. A lot of political developments this Thanksgiving weekend. President-elect Trump announced that he wants to replace the current FBI director with a loyal ally, effectively pushing out the current director, who still has 3 years left of his term. Will he succeed? Trump also naming two of his in-laws to key diplomatic posts. It comes as the president-elect is also talking tariffs. It comes as the president-elect also talked tariffs at a dinner with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at Mar-a-Lago. We'll tell you about that meeting, as well as the latest announcement that he is threatening 100% tariffs on 9 other countries.
You get a tariff, and you get a tariff, and you get a tariff. Everybody gets a tariff. We'll talk about the strategy.
An international story we're watching over the weekend, major developments in the 13-year civil war in Syria. Moving to Eastern Europe, Ukraine's president urging the U.S. and its allies to invite the country into NATO to help end its war with Russia. And the U.S. announcing it is suspending its strategic partnership with the country of Georgia after a pro-Russian political party takes over its government. And back here at home, we'll bring you the numbers from the record-breaking shopping weekend this Thanksgiving, as Cyber Monday today is supposed to be the biggest spending day of the year. Mo News has some special coverage we'll tell you about.
And hundreds of you joined Mo News Premium over the weekend, so we'll talk about our extended deal through today.
Plus, more than 40 inches of snow fell in some regions over the weekend, how it affected travel home from the holiday. And finally, a big weekend at the box office, Moana 2, Wicked, Gladiator 2, breaking Thanksgiving records. We'll tell you which one topped the charts. And Moshe, you and I contributing to that box office.
Yes, I'll tell you about our 9 a.m. movie time on Sunday.
Yes, 9 a.m., not p.m. That's how you know you're a parent with a newborn.
That's how you know you're the parent of a small child. It's all about convenience and finding a babysitter.
And Moshe is on this day in history.
Your clue today, the 2 stars of the film are wicked smart.
How about them apples?
How about them apples? Emphasis on the apples.
All right, to our top story here, the latest evidence this weekend that President-elect Donald Trump is ready to battle some of the key departments in the government and name leaders who say they will completely remake those agencies. On Saturday, Trump named Kash Patel as his choice for the director of the FBI. Patel has said he would fire numerous people there, literally empty out the FBI headquarters and turn it into a museum. The move effectively pushes out the current FBI director, Christopher Wray, who is only 7 years into his 10-year term, and replaces him with a staunch loyalist at an agency that is meant to be independent from presidential politics, hence the 10-year term. Patel has promised to seek retribution against Trump's perceived enemies. He said he would get rid of any FBI officials that refused to go along with Trump's agenda. Patel worked in the first Trump administration on mostly foreign policy and national security. He started his career as a public defender. Kash does need to be confirmed by the Senate and will face an uphill battle given how controversial he is, and because the position is meant to be free of political interference, although some Senate Republicans did voice support for Patel on Sunday. In his first administration, Trump looked at naming Patel second in command at the FBI, but at the time, then Trump Attorney General Bill Barr said in his memoir, quote, "Over my dead body." CIA Director Gina Haspel also threatened to quit if Patel joined the FBI. That time around, Trump backed down. Notably, Trump chose the current director, Christopher Wray, the man that he's currently trying to push out as director of the FBI back in 2017 to replace the controversial Jim Comey. But then Trump became critical of him shortly after for not executing what he wanted to do at the FBI. So now he wants him replaced by a loyalist that he could trust. Although, again, FBI directors are not meant to change with each administration. It is not clear whether or not Wray will step down amid the pressure.
Yeah, so there was Jim Comey, who Democrats and Republicans alike had their issues with. Trump replaced him with Chris Wray, not happy with Chris Wray. So he's back again saying, while your term is supposed to run through 2027, I'm done with you. That announcement over the weekend, sending a message to Wray to quit or expect being fired on January 20th when Trump takes over. Now, as far as these 10-year terms for FBI director, this was put into place in the 1970s after Watergate. The idea was to make the position less political, less connected to the president at the time, so their terms don't coincide with 4-year presidential terms. Now, of course, in 2027, Trump will get a chance, if he was to follow the 10-year terms, to replace the FBI director. But Trump wants to start immediately here with somebody who will pursue his agenda. Trump still feels burned by, among other things, the fact that the FBI conducted that search of his Mar-a-Lago home during the classified records case. Remember, Trump allegedly lied to the FBI, wouldn't give up top secret documents, leading to the FBI raid of Mar-a-Lago. So there are a number of issues that Trump has with the existing FBI and its leadership. As far as the replacement here, or at least the replacement Trump wants, Kash Patel, 44 years old, rocks a MAGA hat all the time. Jill, he's literally written children's books where he is a wizard protecting a man named King Donald against evil characters named Hillary and Kamala. This is a children's book. He has a series of children's books that he's written here. More on his side activities, though, in a second, but that just gives you a sense of Kash Patel here. He speaks at all the major political events. He's campaigned for Donald Trump here. So this would be an FBI director pick, unlike any other we've seen in modern history. Patel, like many Republicans, has been deeply critical of the FBI for, he says, targeting conservatives. He came up as a lawyer, spent a couple years at a junior level at the Justice Department before moving to Capitol Hill, where he spent time pushing back and investigating the accusations that Trump and the Russians were close. That got Patel into Trump's orbit. Then Trump put him on various positions, nothing Senate confirmable in his previous administration. And then, as you mentioned, wanted to put him in at a top position. And Bill Barr, who was a Trump loyalist, said, "Over my dead body." Notably here, Trump has reportedly said of Patel, a lot of people say he's crazy. I think he's kind of crazy, but sometimes you need a little crazy. Nonetheless, the idea here, as you mentioned, is Trump is trying to install people all over the government that are ready to knock heads, that have talked about completely reimagining and firing a whole bunch of people. He's got Pete Hegseth as the nominee for Pentagon. He's talked about that. Tulsi Gabbard to be Director of National Intelligence. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and a whole bunch of those health picks that say they're going to blow up things at HHS, FDA, CDC. He tried to put Matt Gaetz in as Attorney General. That didn't quite work out. But nonetheless, Pam Bondi, his replacement pick there, has also talked about really changing things up at the Justice Department, albeit she has more experience. And now you have Kash Patel here as the potential FBI director. Specifically at the Justice Department, they've talked about firing a whole bunch of people who were involved in the prosecutions of Trump, prosecutions of other conservatives. Remember, Steve Bannon went to jail. Michael Flynn went to jail. Roger Stone went to jail. So a whole bunch of Trump allies have been federally investigated, charged, and convicted in recent years here. And so they're talking about taking down enemies within FBI, within DOJ, declassifying things left and right, angry with anyone who was involved in the search of Mar-a-Lago. At the same time, Kash Patel here facing an uphill battle for Senate confirmation. We didn't hear from any Senate leadership, Senate GOP leadership over the weekend. We did hear from Senate allies of Trump, Ted Cruz, Tommy Tuberville, Haggerty of Tennessee, all of them very positive towards Patel. Nonetheless, you're looking at a confirmation battle for Patel as FBI director among several of the picks we've talked about who will have to ensure they don't lose more than 3 Republicans of the 53 Republicans in order to get through here. The question for Republicans on Capitol Hill: are they willing to challenge Trump on any of these choices, knock down any of these choices? If they are, would they do more than one pick, or then just choose they're going to take down one of these individuals? I'm talking Hegseth, Gabbard, Patel, or Kennedy. Nonetheless, January 20th becomes a crucial date here. If Chris Wray decides not to resign, he's like, listen, I got a term till 2027. You got to fire me. We'll see how this all rolls out in the coming days and weeks here. Does he want to be fired by Trump? Does he want to resign before that? Then you're looking at a potential acting FBI director. Trump will have to look around. There's certain rules at DOJ that you have to pick someone with a certain amount of experience at the agency. I don't believe, based on my reading of the acting laws, that Patel could serve in that role, though we'll see. But Trump will likely be looking for a loyalist at the deputy level or slightly below that to serve as acting FBI director. You can have that person serve for 200 plus days while the Senate doesn't confirm somebody. It's going to be a rocky time at the FBI for a bit. And Jill, I should add, I got some notes from some folks inside the FBI who said as much to me over the weekend, saying, we're buckling up here.
And Moshe, I think that the real concern for Americans is that it comes at a time when Christopher Wray, in his own words, has said that there has never been more threats against the United States in the form of domestic terrorism and other things that they are up against.
Right. A reminder that all these agencies, particularly the national security agencies, when we're talking about CIA, FBI, their job is to be right 100% of the time. Is anybody who has a threat, who could act by themselves and kill an American or do some major attack, they have to be right all the time and have to keep their focus there. So the concern is when you put people like this in charge or even have these conversations, that it serves as a distraction for people who should be just focused on the threat right now, the threats, plural, that we face. Nonetheless, I should add that, even people who don't like Patel here will admit that the FBI, DOJ are in need of reform. And like has been the drumbeat on this podcast, the question is not about whether they need reform. I think even Democrats and Republicans would agree these agencies need reform. Who is best to do that? What process will they follow? Do they have the right experience to do that reform, to conduct those reforms? Like, at the same time, as we said, these people have their day job of focusing on, at least for the FBI, major threats.
And Moshe, Trump celebrating the Thanksgiving holiday at Mar-a-Lago over the weekend, posting on social media, quote, "Happy Thanksgiving to all, including the radical left lunatics who have worked so hard to destroy our country, but who have miserably failed." While there, he named a couple of his in-laws to key diplomatic posts. Trump announced Massad Boulos as his senior advisor to the president on Arab and Middle Eastern affairs. Boulos is a billionaire businessman. He was born in Lebanon, and notably, he is Trump's daughter Tiffany's father-in-law. Boulos campaigned for Trump specifically to drum up Lebanese and Arab American support during the election. Ivanka's father-in-law also got an even more prominent position this weekend. Charles Kushner, his son-in-law Jared's father, has been nominated to be the ambassador to France. Kushner is a real estate developer. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison in 2005 on federal charges of tax evasion, campaign finance, and witness tampering. Trump did pardon him in 2020. And Moshe, the backstory here is wild.
Yeah, the Kushner backstory is wild. Trump keeping it all in the family. Remember, he had Jared, Ivanka serve roles in his first administration. They said, we're out. But now Jared's dad, Charles, gets this very plush assignment. I mean, being ambassador to France, probably one of the most coveted ambassador roles, given that you get to live in Paris and deal with the relationship with the French, which goes back to the Revolutionary War here. But as you mentioned, interesting backstory here that will come up in the confirmation hearing, rest assured. You mentioned Charles Kushner served prison time about 20 years ago. Part of the trial against Kushner, Jared's dad, the evidence that was presented showed that Kushner actually targeted his brother-in-law, his sister's husband, who at the time was cooperating with authorities against Charles for his various financial crimes. And so Charles Kushner hires a prostitute to seduce his brother-in-law, again, his wife's husband. They shoot video of it, and then he sends those videos to his sister. Kushner admitted to all of this back during that case 20 years ago. He later apologized to his sister for the whole scheme as part of a deal. Now, notably, to add to the interesting nature of this case, at the time, the U.S. attorney, his name was Chris Christie. Chris Christie is the person who would later become New Jersey governor, run for president. You guys are mostly familiar with him on this podcast. Well, Chris Christie was the U.S. attorney at the time. He prosecutes Charles Kushner. He actually wanted him to serve even more prison time. He called it one of the most loathsome, disgusting crimes he'd ever seen, puts Charles Kushner away. Fast forward 10 years, Chris Christie's advising Donald Trump, and he then blames Jared Kushner, Charles's son, for pushing him out as the head of the transition back in 2016. So just a fascinating, wild backstory here. And we bring it up only because ambassadors do have to go through Senate confirmation. So you can expect to hear about this whole case when his hearing comes up to be ambassador to France. Again, a role that's typically given to a big donor or ally here, a very cushy assignment. But it is notable here that Trump doesn't love Emmanuel Macron, the president of France. So typically you would go with somebody who, has spent a lot of time in France, speaks French, has a connection, a relationship there. Trump going here with Charles Kushner. And it's going to be fascinating here. Again, we talked about all these Senate confirmation hearings. We just talked about Patel and Kennedy and Gabbard and Hegseth. Republicans have a majority here. Many of them have said, listen, Trump gets what Trump wants for the beginning of his presidency here. So Trump here really going with people who are very close to him. In the case of Kushner, again, his son-in-law's father, who he gave a pardon to just a few years ago.
And yet, still more political updates from this long Thanksgiving weekend. The Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his top advisor flew to Mar-a-Lago on Friday night to meet with Trump after Trump threatened to impose a 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico by executive order on his first day in office. He said he would do so unless the two countries addressed drug trafficking at its borders with the U.S. Trudeau quickly moved to meet with Trump, facing pressure over how to handle the announcement, given that tariffs would create huge economic difficulties for much of Canada that relies on business with the United States. Trump posted on his social media platform, Truth Social, that the meeting was productive and that they discussed important topics like the fentanyl drug crisis, fair trade deals, and the U.S. trade deficit with Canada. Still no indication that Trump has backed off his pledge to impose tariffs on Canada, Mexico, or any other countries.
Yeah, we talked about Trump's love of tariffs here. He called it on the campaign trail the most beautiful word in the English language is not love, but tariffs. And he has already here in the transition, he's not even president yet officially for another 7 weeks or so, but he has now vowed those tariffs against Canada and Mexico as part of a strategy here to get them to change their policies on various issues that he cares about. Trudeau tweeted a picture of him and Trump over the weekend sitting together at Mar-a-Lago, smiling, saying, "Thanks for dinner, President Trump. I look forward to the work we can do together." It does come at a time that Trudeau is in political trouble up in Canada. He faces elections next year as the Conservative Party north of the border is on the rise. So we'll see what comes of all that and whether this is a leverage negotiation tool or whether Trump will actually follow through here on the tariffs for our allies here in North America. At the same time, over the weekend, he threatened 100% tariffs, basically the doubling of the price of anything coming from the BRIC countries. The BRICS, named after Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, hence BRICS, B-R-I-C-S. They started out with those 5 countries. They've now expanded to also include Egypt, Ethiopia, the UAE, Iran, and there's another dozen plus countries that want to join the BRICS. They're basically an alliance of countries that are not the kind of typical G7 countries there. And so Trump threatening that he will impose tariffs on them if they leave the U.S. dollar. Now, most of international trade, oil purchases, etc., happens on the U.S. dollar. BRICS countries have been threatening to use one of their currencies or a collective currency there. Trump said, you're all going to get tariffs if you stop using the dollar here. Russia specifically has threatened a new payment system. Now, it's not clear how serious this threat is because there's not really a currency, even the euro, that can really challenge the dollar these days. Nonetheless, Trump is issuing these tariff threats as at least the beginning here of a negotiation tactic meant to jumpstart talks here and get things in line, even ahead of taking office here in January.
And Moshe, the current president, also making news here. Some breaking news, actually, on Sunday night. President Biden said that he issued a pardon for his son, Hunter. It is a reversal for President Biden, who has repeatedly said that he would not be using his executive authority to pardon his son. It comes ahead of Hunter's December 12th sentencing. He was convicted on federal gun charges. And then separately on December 16th, he is also set to be sentenced after pleading guilty to federal tax evasion charges. President Biden saying on Sunday, after signing that pardon, quote, the charges in his cases, Hunter's cases, came about only after several of my political opponents in Congress instigated them to attack me and oppose my election. No reasonable person who looks at the facts of Hunter's cases can reach any other conclusion than Hunter was singled out only because he is my son. And that is wrong.
Yeah, we should note here the pardon covers both of the cases. The tax evasion case, Hunter has repaid those taxes, more than $1 million in taxes he didn't pay initially. The gun charges, he'd bought a gun, he never used it, he then threw it away after 10 days, but basically lied on the application because he was on drugs at the time he bought the gun. And for the most part, these cases are never prosecuted if you don't actually commit a crime with that gun. So Joe Biden saying here, especially given that he's not going to be president again, Kamala Harris is not going to be president, that he doesn't want his son to face prison time, that Hunter was treated differently than anybody else would have been. He writes, in trying to break Hunter, they've tried to break me. There's no reason it'll stop here. Enough is enough. Biden continues, for my entire career, I've followed a simple principle. Just tell the American people the truth. They'll be firm-minded. Here's the truth. I believe in the justice system, but as I've wrestled with this, I also believe raw politics has infected this process and it led to a miscarriage of justice. I hope Americans will understand why a father and a president would come to this decision. Joe, we've told people here on this podcast this was very much expected. After July 21st, which is the date that Biden decided not to run for re-election here, wasn't going to face political issues here. How can Joe Biden, who literally didn't run for president the last time back in 2016 due to his other son, Beau, passing away, how he could leave office and allow Hunter to serve prison time, left anyone saying there's no way he doesn't pardon him. And so he has made this decision here on Sunday night with about 7 weeks left in office. And it comes as there are hundreds of other pardons that he could give here up until 11:59 a.m. on January 20th. But this is certain to send shockwaves in Washington, get some reaction. But nonetheless, president's pardon power is nearly absolute and may even include themselves, though that has not been tested, though that was intimated by Trump at some point. And so Joe Biden here is saying, my son's had enough here. He was treated unfairly. And so I will ensure he will not go to prison.
Okay, now heading overseas, a major development in the long-running Syrian civil war. Over the weekend, thousands of Syrian insurgents took over Aleppo, the most populous city in Syria, home to 2 million people. It is the most significant change in Syria's balance of power in years, and it comes amid a 13-year civil war in the region. Syrian and allied Russian forces launched airstrikes attempting to halt the advances made by the rebel groups in an unprecedented and speedy offensive that took government troops completely by surprise. So the big question here, who are these insurgent groups? And it's actually a few different groups here. They are led by an Islamic jihadist group known as HTS. They took over the Aleppo airport on Saturday, and they have since moved into outlying provinces in the northwestern region, as well as population centers in a region previously held by the government. The country, again, has been immersed in this civil war for more than a decade. It started with a popular uprising against the country's brutal dictator, Bashar al-Assad. Assad refused to step down in 2011, and his government has since been battling various rebel groups within its borders, trying to force him out. The fighting has killed 500,000 citizens and displaced 10 million people. The conflict has become a proxy war for tensions among the world's biggest powers, with Assad's Syrian regime is backed by Iran, Russia, and the Hezbollah terrorist group. The rebels backed by the U.S., Turkey, Israel, and Saudi Arabia.
At least certain rebel groups. Jill, it's sort of like that Spider-Man meme that always goes around with like a bunch of Spider-Mans standing in a circle all pointing at each other. That's sort of Syria here. You got the Assad regime, you got all those countries you mentioned, and then throw in ISIS, Al-Qaeda, the HTS group you mentioned, which is a offshoot of Al-Qaeda, a whole bunch of secular rebel groups, including Kurdish groups. The Turks don't support the Kurdish groups, but support the other groups. The U.S. supports the secular groups, but doesn't support HTS, which is, again, an offshoot of Al-Qaeda here, but now the leader of the rebel groups. So just a mess that's existed in Syria for a very long time. As you mentioned, this goes back to 2011, and the fact that Assad wouldn't step aside has led to the destruction of his country. Even before this takeover of Aleppo, he only controlled about 70% of Syria, 30% controlled by various rebel factions. The U.S. still has some troops in Syria as they try to combat ISIS from rising up again. And the most significant thing is over the weekend, HTS, this Islamic jihadist group, the offshoot of Al-Qaeda, is leading this effort into Aleppo. So while most people cheer the takedown of the dictator Assad here, effectively what's considered a terrorist organization by the U.S. and a number of Western countries is complicating Western support here for the insurgency. Biden's national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, was on CNN over the weekend and said the following.
The group at the vanguard of this rebel advance, HTS, is actually a terrorist organization designated by the United States. So we have real concerns about the designs and objectives of that organization. At the same time, of course, we don't cry over the fact that the Assad government, backed by Russia, Iran, and Hezbollah, are facing certain kinds of pressure. So it's a complicated situation. It's one we're monitoring closely, and we're staying in close touch with regional partners about it.
This is complicated here because the U.S. isn't giving weapons to HTS. Now, HTS has said, listen, we've totally dropped the whole Al-Qaeda thing, but they are still seeking to put extreme Islamist rule here, basically a version of the Taliban in Syria. So a lot of people over the weekend were messaging me being like, wait, who do we root for here in this? We know Assad is a really bad dude, but these groups don't seem like they're great either. And that's, part of the issue here, the complicating issue here. It does not appear like Assad is going away tomorrow, but certainly for a conflict we haven't talked about in a while, a major development. And one of the questions people have is, how did this happen? How did these rebel groups who've been trying to take Aleppo for so many years, how were they finally successful? Well, a few major developments here that we've been covering in the region. Assad has been dependent on Iran, on Russia, on Hezbollah. To basically do his fighting for him, because there's not much of a Syrian government military anymore. Well, what do all those groups and countries have in common? They have their own issues right now, right? Hezbollah has been decimated by the Israeli government. Iran is distracted by its own issues domestically, as well as what's been going on with Hezbollah and Israel. Russia has had its war up in Ukraine after it invaded Ukraine. And so ultimately here, Assad lost control of the most popular city in his country. He met with Iranian officials over the weekend. The Iranians are particularly concerned because they use Syria basically as a jumping off point to get to Lebanon, to threaten Israel. So this would be a huge loss for them if Assad goes down. The Israelis are worried, though, because they don't love Assad, right? Assad is an enemy, but they also don't necessarily want a jihadi group taking over Syria on their border either. So it's a very complicated issue. We'll continue to cover it in the coming days here. But again, it's not as simple as who are the good guys and who are the bad guys here, because there's just so many parties here. Syria has become this war zone. Assad has gassed his own people and committed horrible war crimes. At the same time, you have groups that have a similar philosophy to Hamas, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, basically leading the rebel effort right now. It really upset the secular rebels who didn't want anything to do with this Islamist situation. But they're all, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And ultimately, they're all allied, at least when it comes to taking out Bashar Assad. So it's something we're all watching right now, and we'll see. And we'll try to keep track of all these major developments and parties in the coming days and weeks.
All right, time for the speed read from the Associated Press. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky put out messaging this weekend that he is willing to accept a temporary ceasefire Even as Russia occupies more than 20% of his country, he is now urging President Biden and world leaders to welcome Ukraine into the NATO alliance immediately, saying that it could end the, quote, hot stage of the war. He indicated that NATO membership could help him negotiate with Russia on returning the land they are currently occupying, quote, in a diplomatic way. NATO's 32 member countries have previously said that Ukraine was on its way to membership in its alliance, but that its borders would need to be defined first. Now Zelensky says NATO should act fast by including all of the current territory under Kyiv's control, and then work on including the rest of the occupied territory after negotiations.
Yeah, this looks like a complicated deal here. NATO's big concern is the war needs to end before they can accept Ukraine to the alliance. Otherwise, the bottom line is NATO is involved in a war with Putin and involved in a war with Russia. It's something the alliance has tried to prevent going back to the 1940s when NATO was first created, avoiding a full-on war with Russia. The issue you have in NATO is they have something called Article 5, which means an attack on one country is an attack on all. So effectively, if they let Ukraine in today, that would mean that NATO is automatically at war with Russia. So they want the war to end. It seems like you hear Zelensky here, and this is notable, entertaining the idea of accepting some sort of concession. Now, he says, listen, we're going to get all of our land back. That's unlikely here. Also, a big thing for Putin is not letting NATO be on his border further. He doesn't want Ukraine to be part of NATO. So unclear here if this plan is going to work. But the idea here that you have Zelensky even intimating that he's ready to for a ceasefire and then a negotiation for territory, still significant. It comes as Russia has been making major moves in recent weeks, Jill. They've gained more territory in the last couple months than they have in more than a year, as Ukraine's having a lot of trouble. And you have Donald Trump coming into office soon, who has said that he's planning to cut off aid to Ukraine.
Also in Eastern Europe, from the BBC, the U.S. said on Saturday that it has suspended its strategic partnership with the country of Georgia. It all comes as the Georgian government made the decision not to try and join the European Union. The country is moving closer to Russia after the Putin-aligned Georgian Dream political party claimed victory in the country's October election. Opposition parties have contested the election, alleging fraud.
Yeah, it comes as about 80% of Georgians, according to polls, support EU membership. The people there very much want to be connected to the West, but this Dream Party that's connected to Putin is cracking down on dissent. Putin has very much wanted to bring these former Soviet republics back into Russian control, back into the Russian fold. In Ukraine, he's doing it through military invasion. In Georgia, through support of this Dream Party. And so the U.S. here imposing sanctions on the Dream leaders recently, who they say are responsible for backsliding on democracy. There's been a lot of protests there. They've been violently cracking down on democratic protests in Georgia. So concern there that the Georgia, which again, the people very much want to be connected to Europe and the West, that Putin has been able to get his tenterhooks, so to speak, into Georgia. And so the U.S. here saying that for now, that means a lesser relationship with the country.
All right, so some business news from USA Today as we look back on Black Friday and look ahead to Cyber Monday sales. American shoppers are already breaking records when it comes to holiday spending. Today is Cyber Monday. It is set to be the biggest spending day of the year. Adobe predicts Americans will spend a record $13 billion today. That is up more than 6% from last year. It also means it will be 2024's biggest day of sales. The long weekend broke records also, but shoppers seemed less interested about going to stores. On Black Friday, a record $11 billion was spent online. That is up more than 10% from last year. On Black Friday, a record $11 billion was spent online. That is up more than 10% from last year. And the most popular items for online shoppers, apparel. But Moshe, I could tell you on Friday, I had to get on a highway and I was in bumper to bumper traffic and I was trying to figure out what was going on. And it was mall traffic. So people are still shopping in person.
Suburbia, yeah. Well, that's on suburbia. And I would say in the city, too. Alex and I went down to the Soho neighborhood, which has a lot of shops, etc. And you couldn't, the sidewalks were packed as people were going store to store there. Though we did go to some stores and we said, hey, you have Black Friday special. And some did and some didn't. but they were still full of customers. Billions more were spent on Saturday and Sunday. You actually probably might be shopping, some of you right now, as you listen to this podcast here on this Cyber Monday. Today is going to be a wild day for online retailers. We're going to get a behind-the-scenes look, Jill. People should monitor our Instagram feed today. We'll be out at an Amazon warehouse out in New Jersey, getting a behind-the-scenes glimpse out in Robbinsville, New Jersey, for Instagram of what Cyber Monday is like inside an Amazon fulfillment facility. All this spending, of course, good for the U.S. economy, but it doesn't mean we're out of the woods with inflation. Inflation has been cooling, but tighter budgets have shifted to a focus here for discounts. So we'll see what this tells us about the American consumer. Jill, as we talk about Cyber Monday, don't forget, if you haven't joined Mo News Premium, we have a special Cyber Monday special. If you right now, if you're not a premium member, we're offering the best deal probably ever here at Mo News, an annual membership for just $60 with the code TURKEY over at mo.news/premium. You can get a 1 year of Mo News Premium, access to our members-only Instagram account, podcasts, and all the amazing things we're doing over there in terms of workshops and deep dives on issues, weekend news coverage, Mo News Premium. The code is Turkey, mo.news/premium. And for existing premium members, we're allowing you to bring on somebody for just $10 right now for a group plan with the code ShareMo. What else? ShareMo is the code to bring on somebody. You can find all of that over at mo.news/premium.
From ABC News, nearly 3 million Americans remain under a lake effect snow warning through at least today across parts of western and northern New York, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Ohio.
Massive snowfall. Some areas getting up to 4 feet of snow here. Fun note out of Buffalo, Jill, where they were playing Saturday Night Football, the Bills against the 49ers. They got so much snow, they did a call for fans over the age of 18 to come help them shovel out 18 inches of snow from Highmark Stadium there in Buffalo. They were offering $20 an hour plus food and hot beverages. And apparently hundreds of people from the Buffalo community, Buffalo Bills fans, said, yeah, we will help shovel out the stadium so the game can go on.
They probably would have done it for free and with maybe just some hot cocoa, it sounds like.
I don't know that legally the Bills could have just had free labor. I think they had to offer snow shovelers from the community something.
And to some other sports news from CNN, a big football win for my alma mater, University of Michigan, against its rival Ohio State. But a celebration after the game by Wolverine players led to an ugly brawl on the field after someone on the Michigan side tried to plant a Michigan banner on the Buckeyes field. Players on both teams seemed to start pushing and shoving one another, leading to some punches being thrown. Stadium security and police tried to get control by pepper spraying the players, which you could see on the TV broadcast, players wiping their eyes and coughing. Moshe, I was watching the game. I was watching the post-game interviews, and they were interviewing a player, and you could just see this ruckus behind him as they were doing the interview. And then the interview stopped, and they immediately went to this wide shot of the stadium.
Yeah, Jill, it wasn't the only brawl. There was one between, I think, UNC and NC State over the weekend as well. Shocking to watch, but I'm sure you're excited about the win. And I know that it's a rivalry in your house, Jill, with your husband being an Ohio State alum.
And finally, from CNBC, it was a big holiday weekend at the movie theater between Moana 2, Wicked, Gladiator 2. The 5-day Thanksgiving holiday brought in $420 million as of Sunday. Moana 2 was the box office winner, bringing in $221 million over the last few days, marking the highest performance of any film on Thanksgiving weekend. It even beat out Frozen 2 in 2019, which brought in $125 million. Wicked continued to attract viewers on its second weekend in the theaters with nearly $118 million. And Gladiator 2 added another $44 million to the Thanksgiving total.
Jill, I know we talked about this going into the weekend. Alex and I ended up finding tickets to Wicked. It's hard to find tickets at like normal hours. We found 9 a.m. IMAX tickets on Sunday, and that also coincided with the time we could get a babysitter for Olivia. And so having seen the Broadway show, we went to Wicked. It did not disappoint. I think it actually lives up to the hype here. Having seen the show with Chenoweth and Idina Menzel, the film, of course, with Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo, just visually just stunning. We ended up watching a video afterwards on how some of the set is actually like they built these huge sets and then also incorporated CGI. It's fascinating. We will note that Wicked, of course, is a Broadway show. It has an intermission. In this case, they've put out the film in two parts. Part one is now out. Again, a must-see. Intermission is going to last about a year because part two comes out next November. So some people are like, oh my God, I didn't know there was going to be. I go, guys, just Google it. FYI, you can see it now. See part two next year. But Wicked if you're a fan of the music or you're a fan of the adaptations, I think, honestly, I've heard from some people that they actually like the film more than the Broadway show. Controversial statement there. But Jill, before the holiday, we were talking about how you were heading to Moana 2 this weekend, right?
Moshe, I actually skipped it, but my daughter went with my mother-in-law actually on Saturday so that my husband and I could watch the game, as they call it, the Michigan-Ohio State game. And she loved it. She said that she actually liked Moana 2 better than Moana 1.
There you
So
go.
if you're looking for a review from a 6-year-old, there you go. Really quickly, Moshe, 9 a.m. box office. Was it busy? Were other people in the theater with you?
Jill, it was sold out. Sold out.
So other people had the same idea. Okay.
Other people, same idea. And let me tell you, you know what still tastes good at 9 a.m.? Popcorn. We end here with On This Day in History. On this day in 1955, a woman named Rosa Parks is jailed for refusing to give up her seat on a public bus. The successful Montgomery bus boycott, organized by a young minister named Martin Luther King, followed the historic act of civil disobedience by one Rosa Parks. And on this day in 1959, the world got together and agreed no military activity, no weapons testing, no one gets control of Antarctica. Apparently, going back to the 1800s, a number of countries had laid claim to Antarctica. It led to some armed clashes between Argentina and the British back in 48. In 1959, they get together and say Antarctica is off limits. In music and film news, on this day in 1983, 41 years ago, the Thriller music video comes out, airs for the first time on MTV. And on this day in 1997, the answer to your clue, How You Like Them Apples, Good Will Hunting, a movie that earns Ben Affleck and Matt Damon the Best Screenplay Oscar and makes them household names, comes out 27 years ago today, Jill.
Moshe, when I was in high school, we went to go see that movie during the day as one of our activities in school.
Was it a 9 a.m. showing?
No, I actually think it must have been like a noon showing because I feel like we went into the city to see it randomly.
It was an event. By the way, in celebrity news, Ben Affleck and his other Jennifer ex, Garner, were together over Thanksgiving weekend. For anyone who's still tracking the Lopez, Garner, Ben Affleck back and forth situation.
Who isn't? Who isn't, Moshe? All right, we went a little long today because there was a lot of news to catch up on. So thanks for sticking with us, guys. That is a wrap here on the Mo News Podcast. If you like what you hear, share this with your friends. It helps us grow. Follow us and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And give us a review in the App Store. We really appreciate it.
I'll see you here tomorrow if I can find my way out of the Amazon fulfillment facility in New Jersey.
So if my order gets delayed, I'll know why.
I tripped over it.
Moshe is running around, distracting everybody.
Moshe, can you see if my Amazon box is somewhere in the many acre complex there? Yes, I'll work on it for you, Jill.
All right, bye, guys.